Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to everyone here, and Shabbat Shalom to everyone who is joining us virtually on this Shabbat evening. The sun is still up in the sky. We have beautiful clouds. But as we make this transition from weekday into Shabbat, from just the normal everyday to the sacred, we take in this experience of transition, of moving into Shabbat and finding that space to be present with each other, with our spirits, and just as one community. We're going to start tonight with words that are actually not words, they're just nigun words, more or less. And the words go a little bit like this. Bum, biddy, biddy, bum. Biddy, biddy, bum. Biddy, biddy, bum. Biddy, biddy, bum, biddy, biddy, bum. Something along those lines. And so with the help of Alex Chadsey and Andy Stoller, our amazing musicians who are joining us for tonight, they're going to help me as we teach this piece of music to you. At one point, I'll do something else, but you're going to stay on the bum, biddy, biddy, bums, okay? Okay? Gotcha. Wonderful. Let's do it. All right, so you hear that low note? That's us. Bum, biddy, biddy, 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 bum, biddy. Try that with me. Bum, biddy, biddy, 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 bum. Let me hear you do it. I'm going to do something else. Zaru ala tzadik ul yishrei lev simcha. Let me hear those bum bitty bums. Or zaru ala tzadik ul yishrei lev simcha. Back to the part you know. Bum bitty bitty bum. Bitty bitty bum, bitty bitty bum, bitty bitty bum, bitty 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 bum, bitty bitty bum. One more time. Bum, bitty bitty 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 bum. Thank you both for that. Thank you all for joining with. That was beautiful. We'll be continuing to learn that piece over the next few months, probably. So hopefully it'll be one that becomes very beloved. Who knows? Or at least will be more singable for everyone. Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Dana Benson. As I mentioned, I'm honored to be joined tonight by Alex Chadsey and Andy Stoller, two of our amazing musicians who are going to be helping with leading services this evening, as well as, of course, Jamie Shore, who also is behind, Jamie Harris, rather. Sorry, Jamie. I do that every so often. But Jamie Harris is the magician behind the camera and behind the audio, so thank you, Jamie, for all of those things. And so as we begin this Shabbat evening, we take in that moment of transition, as I mentioned before, through the beauty and uniqueness of lighting the Shabbat candles, that moment which reminds us that we are here, we are together. We are entering into this practice of being able to just be present for a little bit. And we do that through, of course, lighting the Shabbat candles. You can find the Shabbat candle blessing on page 2 of the prayer books you have in front of you. If you're joining us from online, you'll be able to find a link to the online flip book, which will have the same page numbers as the book we're using here. And it's my honor to invite up Phyllis Levy to help us with lighting the blessing. Is anybody coming else with you? Lou also? Lou Kotler? Beautiful.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, So may we in our own day be among those who kindle light.
Amen. And we take that light into ourselves as we share in the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Thank you so much to the both of you. And so we continue with words of welcoming in Shabbat. I believe they are going to be words that we can find together on page 24 of our prayer books, the words of Shalom Aleichem, as we welcome in these angels that we hope will bring goodness and light and maybe even a little comfort to us on Shabbat. Join with us for Shalom Aleichem, page 24. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem, Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni, Barchuni L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzidchem, Tzidchem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so now with that sense of Shabbat coming into our midst, we turn to page 28. We're just going to go, actually, my apologies. We're going to go backwards a few pages. We're going to go to page 20, because we're also going to do Lecha Dodi as we welcome this Shabbat and have a little bit of that moment, that beautiful opportunity to our ancestors used to sit in a field, they say, the mystics specifically. So maybe not all of our ancestors, but at least the mystical, Hasidic, a little bit. They would sit in the field for hours leading up to Shabbat, hours leading up to sunset, waiting for that moment for Shabbat to really hit them. Now, I don't know what that feels like. I have not sat in a field for hours. I wish I had. Sounds beautiful, doesn't it? But what would it mean to have Shabbat wash over us just like a sunset does? What would it feel like to just have that experience of Shabbat moving through us? I invite you to try to find that space as we sing the words of Lecha Dodi together. We're going to do verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. Join together on page 20 for Lecha Dodi. Ya la 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 Lecha Dodi. Ya la 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 likrat kala. Ya la 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 b'nei Shabbat. B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Ya la 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 Lecha Dodi. Ya la 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 likrat kala. ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לקראת שבת, לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. יא לי לי, יא לה 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 לך דודי, יא לה 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 לקראת קלה, יא לה 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 פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. Verse 5. התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, אורי אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני this part now. Join with Ya la 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 lecha dodi, Ya la 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 likrat kala, Ya la 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 penei Shabbat nekabela. We rise and face the entrance if you are able to welcome the Shabbat bride, the Shabbos bride. בואי ושלום, עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, You may be seated. Actually, no, go ahead, be seated. Almost was going to play a little game there, but I wasn't. I'm going to offer a reading from page 27. Teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer, on the mystery of a withered leaf, on ripened fruit so fair, on the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to hope, to despair. Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night you renew your days. Lest my day be today as the one before, lest routine set my ways. We turn to page 28 as I invite you to rise again if you are able for the Baruch Hu. be seated. We turn to page 30, and we're going to join together in the English on the bottom of the page. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, ruling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. We continue now with words of love from our tradition, the words of Ahavat Olam, which can be found on page 32. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Hafta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta, Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, v'shokveinu uvkumeinu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, u'v'mitzvotecha, Leolam vaed, ki hem hayenu ve'orech yameinu, ve'orech yameinu, uvahem nehege yomam, yomam valayla, ve'ahavtecha al tasir, mimenu leolamim, Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. I get asked a lot what I believe about God. I don't know if it's just because of the job I'm in, I'm going to assume so, or that I always bring it up as a fun party conversation. But oftentimes I realize that the question most people are actually asking me is, what God don't you believe in? Is it that big guy up in the sky? Because I'm not cool with that one. Is it this? Because it's not quite the way I see it. As many people are in this room right now, or as many different versions of whatever the divine, something greater than ourselves, whatever we want to call it, is. What I usually like to refer to it as is that thing that makes us all part of the same world. The energy force that connects us to the plants, to the trees, to each other, through love, through communication, through seeing each other, through valuing the humanness, the creatures, the earth, as it is and for all that it can bring. For me, when I say the words of Shema and I think about monotheism and I think about God, I think about those things. About the fact that although we are so divided by opinions, beliefs, how we approach the world, politics, and I'll leave politics there for the moment, although we may seem so different in all of those pieces, we are all united by similar things. And when we can really sit with that, when we can really recognize that each of us is part of that same greater whole, that's when we achieve the hopes of the Shema. Of finding that sense of listening, of being present, of being together as one. We join in the words of Shema together on pages 34 and 35. Shema Yisrael
Shem kevod malchuto leolam va'ed. Baruch Shem kevod malchuto leolam va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
We turn to page 36 now, and before we jump into the Ve'ahavta, I always talk about how this is another prayer of love. For those of you who haven't heard me spiel about the fact that it's a love sandwich, congratulations. Now you've heard it. But truly, we have words of love before the Shema and words of love after the Shema. And the words before are about being able to receive and accept love. The words after, the words of the Ve'ahavta, which we're about to say, are about how we can share love. There's a beautiful teaching about tefillin, which in the Reform movement we don't do much of, so if you're not aware of what it is, I'll give you a little explanation. I think they're called phylacteries is the appropriate English term, which I don't know how to spell, don't quiz me. But what it is, it's the leather straps that you wrap on your arm and have on your head. So you may have seen that it has a box on your head and a box on your arm. And yes, particularly the left arm, closest to the heart. And as the teaching goes, is you wear one on your head so that your thoughts and your heart will always be in conversation before it leads to action. That your mind and your heart have to come into reconciliation so that you may be able to figure out how to best act. I think this Ve'ahavta piece, I think this moment of transition from words of receiving love, how do we take that into our heart? How do we think about the connection we have to each other? But most importantly, how do we act upon both of those? Join me for the Ve'ahavta on page 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meodecha vehayu hadevarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'divarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'ekumecha Ukshartam lehot al yadecha, vehayu letotafot beinenecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uvisharecha, leman tizkeru, ve'asitem et kol mitzvotai, vitem kedoshim lelohechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem lelohim Ani Adonai Elohechem emet. In this week's Torah portion, Chukat, don't worry, this is not the Devar Torah yet. I promise. But in this week's Torah portion, Chukat, we actually hear about Moses and Miriam and Aaron, all three. We're going to be hearing about them in the Parsha at the ends of their story. But here, in many ways, they're in a formative moment. Here, meaning page 40, the Micha Mocha, the words of freedom that Miriam supposedly sang, hopefully sang, as she was crossing through the open split sea. And we always talk about this is a song of freedom. This is a moment to dance. And it is. It really is. We have timbrels in hand and all these things. And yet, I don't know if you remember what happens after they get across the sea. There's a lot of complaining. We don't have food. We don't have water. It would have been better if we just stayed in Egypt. No. They don't have an easy time of it. And if you're thinking about Miriam, Moses, and Aaron, they're the leaders. And they have to figure out how to garner hope, how to garner strength, how to garner comfort as they literally stand on the edge of a splitting sea, uncertain of the world ahead. The world's always kind of uncertain. We're calling it a VUCA period of time because of the pandemic, but let's be real, the entire world is always kind of volatile and unpredictable. We just think we have a little control over it. But Micha Mocha is that reminder that even in that transitional moment of recognizing that the cold feet of wanting to maybe run backwards in something, this is a moment of recognizing the strength, the courage, the hope, the love that we can garner if we work together, if we support each other as we go through even the most unpredictable of steps in our world. Join with us, page 40, Micha Mocha.
Who is like you, Adonai? Who is like you,
Let's do some yai-dai-dais. Let me hear ya. Thank you. Oh, beautiful. And so now we turn to the central prayers of our tradition for Shabbat evening, the Amidah, the standing prayer as it's known. It'll begin on page 46, and we'll do the first few blessings together, and then we'll have some time for some silent prayer. So I invite you, if you are able, to please rise for the Amidah. Adonai sefatai tiftach
Ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up your lips that our mouths may declare our praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'Koneh HaKol, Ve'Zocher Chastei Avot ve'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Lema'an Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye hakol atah Rav le'oshia, Morid atah, Mechalkel chaim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofech cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umido melach, Melech memit u'mechayeh, U'matzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lechayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh, v'shimcha kadosh, U'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. We'll take the next few moments to pray quietly, and you can either use the words on the page or the meditations of your own heart. In a few moments, we'll join back together on page 62. Whenever your prayers are completed, you can feel free to take a seat. Adonai Zori So as I alluded to earlier, it's Parsha Chukat. Now this is the Devar Torah, in case you're wondering. It's going to be a Devar. It's going to be like a taste of Torah, a ta'am of Torah, a little bit. And as I mentioned before, we actually are meeting Moses and Aaron and Miriam. Although we're in the book of Numbers, we're meeting them really for the last time in a certain case. The Parsha opens with the part about the red heifer, which I'm not going to go into. There are scholars far wiser than me who understand the purifying powers of a red cow. So I'm going to go into the next part, which is the death of Miriam. Probably one of the most difficult moments as the Israelites went through the desert. They considered Miriam their spiritual well, a voice of hope, a voice of justice, a prophetess, unique in her age and generation. And that is the first loss that the Israelites are dealt during this Parsha. Next, we have a wonderful sequence in which the Israelites, as they do, complain about not having food and water yet again. And if you want to know more about the grammatical structure of why it's different than earlier in Numbers, come to tomorrow's Minyan morning service. You'll hear about it then. But then they have this moment where the Israelites are complaining. God's like, okay, Moses, go hit a rock, and water will spring forth. And what does Moses do? He goes and hits a rock, but he hits it an extra time, and apparently that makes God grumpy. And then God's like, hey, Moses, you're not going into the land of Israel. Punishment, crime, not so sure I understand the linear thinking there, but far beyond me. But then the Parsha ends with the loss of Aaron. Aaron dies at the end of this Torah portion. And so our ancestors were dealt 3 huge blows in a row. They lost their spiritual leader. They knew they were going to have to enter into the land without their moral, ethical leader. And their priestly leader, the individual who helped them to uphold the rituals of their community, also was gone and had, of course, passed it down to the next generation. As I let's just say glance through the news, because I'm not sure I can take a deeper read all the time. But as I look through the news, I recognize that this is a moment where we are needing leadership. We are needing voices of people who are inspirational, who want to help create change. And while I recognize that there is this need, I actually think the need of leadership has transitioned quite a bit. Here in the story of Chukat, here in our Torah portion, we have this large moment. Mind you, we're still going to have all of Deuteronomy. We still have Moses talking for whole 40, 50 chapters yet. Don't worry about it. But we have this moment of reckoning for the Israelites of who are they going to be. Now, Rashi says something very interesting about this being the community that's going into the land of Israel, right? The Israelite generation, the generation that had been before, that had been in Egypt, that had been enslaved, is now gone. And Miriam and Moses and Aaron are part of that. And so now this is going to be a new generation that's going to have to reckon with the issues that their leaders and their ancestors are handing down to them. Sound familiar? We have a lot of things that are happening in this world right now. And let me tell you, I have found myself scared, in pain, empty as I think about some of the situations in our world. There's so much loss of life. There's so much anger and hatred towards one another. Man, people on the street are even getting more aggressive in their cars. What's that? And it's because all of us are feeling a unique, acute pressure and tension. And to wake up to that day after day, I can see it on your faces even as I said it. It's getting hard, isn't it? It's really getting harder and harder. Now, Rabbi, you're not supposed to have a Devar Torah that doesn't have an Nechemta that has a joyous ending. You need to make sure you uplift people at the end. Why are you talking about all the issues of the world? Well, actually, there is an Nechemta here. Many of us in this room have been our part, hopefully will continue to be part of the generation that goes to the streets when change needs to happen. But I am happy and even gladdened to tell you that Gen Z has gone to the screens. While we will continue to go to the streets, Gen Z is fearless. I don't know if you've heard about some of the things they've done to counteract the work of the Supreme Court in recent weeks. But if you don't, it involves some things that probably I shouldn't condone on YouTube, but they have leaked information both regarding the financial information as well as the addresses of many of the Supreme Court justices so that you can personally write them a letter. And of course, there are others who are taking the ability to use some of the finances of those individuals in their own hands to donate it to organizations like Planned Parenthood. Fearless. Many of us in this room would be like, how you have no fear of what the repercussions of that will be? They see a world that's broken. They know that there's hypocrisy in their government. They know there's hypocrisy in the authorities in their world. And they aren't afraid to go out and challenge it. Truly, Gen Z, fearless. And my friends, that's part of the transition of leadership. The way that we think that we need to be able to create change, the mechanisms, the routes that we are so accustomed to from the past are no longer necessarily the routes that are going to work. And that's what's so beautiful about seeing an upcoming generation that we are trying to feed information of hope, of strength, of courage, of resilience. And man, they are biting down and taking our words seriously, and they are doing things that some of us may never have thought possible or would even think to do. Transitions of leadership aren't easy. I mean, there's a whole book by a guy named Bridges, if you want to learn about transitions. Yes, it's funny that his name is Bridges. It's a dated book, but still very, very useful. But we're in a moment where the way that we are going to move forward, that leaders are going to move forward, has to transition. It has to be shaped differently. And it's one of the things that our Torah reminds us. Even though we've had these leaders that we chant about in our prayers that are part of our deepest memories of who leaders are, they too have to go at some point because they're no longer going to nourish what needs to come next. And while we'll miss them and honor them, we know that those next steps are ahead. And so this Shabbat, I encourage all of us to take a moment, to take stock of those leaders who have been in our lives, the ones who've imbued pieces that still are in our kishkas, still are carried with us day to day. So I invite you to take a breath, take a moment right now, and just envision someone for whom has been a leader for you. What were the qualities that they imbued? What were the values they lived by? And how did they share that and guide others in that? Does anyone want to share a mentor or a moment they were thinking of in particular? It's funny, when I think of them, I realize that many of them are much younger than me. I have so many mentors and friends who I still look to for such wisdom. But the teachings that I know that I now have to learn and live by, the acts of justice that are required of us, some of those have been taught to me already just by the upcoming generations. It's one of the hardest things to do is to change, to recognize your own shift in becoming a leader after being someone who has learned, and to help give more of that information to the next generation of leaders as they continue to grow and come up. We can help them. They're fearless, but we can help them, we can support them, we can guide them, and we can offer them love. And so this Shabbat, take in those leaders who have been in your life. Take in the learnings that are still around you. Take in the tension of what it means to go through a transition of leadership, because it is difficult. It is very tense. As I mentioned before with the Micha Mocha, these were the same ancestors of ours who had to look ahead through the sea and try to figure out who they were going to be as a people. It's the beauty of Reform Judaism, renewal Judaism, or Reconstructionist Judaism, anything with a re. But it's that we continue to reimagine how Judaism makes our lives more important, how Judaism helps to guide us in who we will become. That's the beauty of it. And that's what our ancestors have had to do. And so this Shabbat, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom and a Shabbat of lifting up the voices of who is yet to come and of just being present with all that can be. Because yeah, these moments are going to be hard. And guess what really helps when things get hard? Shabbos. A reminder that we can come into wholeness when we're in space together. We can come into wholeness when we're present together. We can come into wholeness when we help to heal and listen to each other. Shabbat Shalom. With those words and those concepts of continuing to heal each other, we turn our thoughts now to those who are in need of healing, whether it be physically or spiritually, whether in body or in heart. And so as we get ready for the Misha Berach prayer, which will be a version on page 253, I invite you to share the names of those you're thinking about at this time aloud or hold them in your heart. Amen. We take in all of those names, the individuals in Ukraine, and all of those who have been impacted by injustice as well as violence in the past months, weeks, and years. And so we turn to the music of our own Temple Beth Am musical crew to offer us the words of Heal Us Now, page 253.
Rifa'enu Adonai v'nerafeh Hoshienu v'ni v'she'ah Hen karov l'chol korov Kal karov l'reyav Yishmo. We pray for healing of the body. We pray for healing of the soul, for strength.
We also consider those who are no longer with us, those mentors, leaders, friends, family who have been in our lives and have shared so much with us. And while they are no longer alive in this world, their light continues to flicker on within each of us as we keep their memory and their values alive. Our community is in the period of Shiva for Esther Essie Fleisch, mother of Phyllis Levy and Judy Silberman, mother-in-law of Lou Kotler and Rick Silberman, grandmother of Claire and Joel Kotler and Sarah and Seth Silberman. We are also in the period of Shloshim for the following individuals: Stephen Frederick Weiss, son of founding members Molly Weiss of blessed memory and Henry J. Weiss of blessed memory, brother of Margot Weiss. Claudia Ramirez Cantu, mother of Kathy Hiller, mother-in-law of Stephen Hiller, grandmother of Marissa Hiller and Alex Hiller. Jerry Green, brother of Shirley Bernstein. Vicki Watt Warshaw, wife of Mark Warshaw, mother of Rachel and Sarah Warshaw, daughter of Carolyn and John Warshaw of blessed memory. Freema Nadelson, mother of Anita Nadelson. Our community also acknowledges the Yort site, the annual remembering of a passing of these individuals from our community. Ava Ansel, Sam Aronin, Hermine Bassnight, Sheldon Blair, Ronald Boss, Dolph Brown, Dorothy Kaplan Trodlier, Milton Clark, Daniel Fishman, Suzanne Fligner, Alice Thorpe Foster, Beryl Greenberg, Muriel Hiller, Alice Horn, Alan Jacobs, Adas Kissen, Jay Kornfeld, Phyllis Kornov, Suzanne Kremen, Leonard Martin, Joseph Raitt, Elfrida Reisman, Nina Rosenthal, Roberta Kalin Rothenberg, Morris Salzberg, Samuel Schiller, Norma Ellen Schaefer, Alyssa Solomon, Edward Sparrer, Claire Weiss, and Arthur Whitkin. If there are any names that you would like to add to this list that have been forgotten or have been mispronounced, I invite you to share those names aloud at this time. We gather those names together with all of those who have been impacted by the war in Ukraine and all of those who have suffered at the hands of injustice. If you're in the period of Shiva or Shloshim, I invite you to rise. If this is a Yort site or you're in the first year of mourning, I invite you to rise. And as is Temple Beth Am custom, if it is yours, I invite you to join us in standing, if you are able, for the Mourner's Kaddish to stand in support of all of those who are in mourning. The Kaddish can be found on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, ve'alma divra chirute ve'amlich malchute, ve'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv ve'imru amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam olmei almaya. Yitbarach ve'yishtabach ve'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekudisha brichu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata ta'amiran be'elma ve'imru amen. Yehe shlama Rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru Amen. Al kol yoshvei tevel, all people of the earth. You may be seated. So, for many of you, you know that we've transitioned from doing announcements to sharing simchas and joyous events. If you have any questions about what's going on at Temple Beth Am, check the website, is what we suggest. But we also recognize that no simcha, no joy is complete without gratitude. And at Temple Beth Am, we are grateful that this Shabbat gathering is happening on coastal Salish land, specifically of the Duwamish tribe. In addition to gratitude as a community, we commit ourselves to continuing to learn more and continuing to actively support indigenous peoples and their tribes. Temple Beth Am is currently offering a monthly donation to the United Indians of All Tribes Foundation in an effort to continue and ongo our partnership and relationship to them. So simchas, are there any joyous events that anyone wants to share? Anybody have some good news for us to take in at this moment in time? Yes, Celia. Celia started learning the oboe. Beautiful. A very reedy instrument. Hey. Okay, bad. No, other simchas. Other joys. No? Aw, Andy's excited because his wife's coming home after being away for 3 weeks, you said? Oh, always a good thing to get to see your partner after a few weeks. I'm going to go here, then here, then here. Yes. One more time with the website. What is it? All right, a wonderful teaching and reminder here that if we ever need good news, goodnewsnetwork.org has good news for us. Always a good thing to know. Yes, I saw Toby's hand. We'll come back to you. Go for it. David Burns. Yeah, is it a David Burns website? Do you know? Is there? Well, we'll sort it later. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, we had a very successful vacation, which she just returned from. I'm coming to you after. We got one more here. Come to you. Summer has finally made it to Seattle. That's true. It's a very joyous thing indeed. Oh, she got to go to Universal Studios and Disneyland. That's exciting. Oh my gosh. I also got to go and have a little bit of time with family on vacation, so I'll share that as a simcha as well. Not as exciting, though, as Disneyland, I will say. Anything else? Wonderful. And so we're going to close with Kiddush and Motzi. I'm going to ask this in advance. Think about who wants to get a challah tonight, since we're still in our COVID rules. Only the person who is blessing the challah and eats the first bite gets the challah. So take a moment to consider amongst yourselves who might want to do that. We're going to turn to page 5 for the Kiddush. So please join me on page 5. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho v'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit, ki hu yom techila lemikrae kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim, ki vanu v'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim, ve'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. L'chaim. To all of you at home, enjoy. All of you all out there, eventually enjoy. All right. So, who wants a challah? Come on up. You're the bravest person. Threw up your hand. Come on up. All right. The blessing for the motzi can be found on page 302 if you want to join with us. All right. All righty. I'm going to unwrap that for you. Try not to touch the Kiddush cup too much. My bad. All right, there you go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon. Amen. And why don't you take a bite to make it a kosher blessing on behalf of all of us? Yeah, I totally get it. Oh, yeah. But grateful for them nonetheless amidst everything. The masks is what we're talking about. All right, so you can take a seat. We're gonna close with words of salam shalom. Yeah, you can take a seat. Yeah, oh yeah, it's yours. It's your door prize. You could go home with that. So we're gonna sing ourselves into the Shabbat, this last moment together, with words of salam, shalom, od yavo shalom aleinu. Shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Thank you again, Alex and Andy and Jamie and Barbara, for all your help, our shamash for the evening. Shabbat shalom, everyone.